All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a late night edition of Warhammer Weekly. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer Weekly. I am here, as always, with my ever-present co-host, Antonin Scalia. Say hi, Tom.
Hey, everybody.
Joining us as well is all the way from the Great White North is Kieran Dunlavey. So introduce yourself there, Kieran.
I had to dig my way into the house through piles of snow today because we're inundated with it. And my left arm shoveling arm is way stronger than my right arm shoveling arm. That's what I discovered.
Like how much is buried in it right now? Because I'm looking at like 14 to 16 inches outside, and I'm in Kentucky.
Well, see, here's the thing about us in Edmonton in Canada is when snow falls, it doesn't melt. It's for 6 months, right?
Fair enough.
So the new snow goes onto the old snow, which goes onto the older snow, and all it does is pack down a little bit, but it's still all there.
You know, Kieran, when we first started talking, and I was picturing you and Mallory in Alberta, I seriously could just picture you living, and of course it's the stupid American thing, but I was just picturing you all living in some sort of cabin in the middle of an endless woods of like logging camps and stuff. Not having an idea of Edmonton and realizing that it's actually quite a large and very nice, city. Like, yeah, you got some good stuff going on up there in Canada. It's a nice place.
Vince, did you just assume that for terrain they would just go outside and gather some sticks and glue that
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so if I can perpetuate that idea in any way, then I'll do that.
All right. Well, very good. Let's start out with the week in review. So this is Warhammer Weekly. So what happened this week? Well, the first thing I wanted to mention is coming up this weekend. I believe it's this weekend, right? Is the U.S. Masters. So I watched all of the. Once Bitten has a very nice segment up of the U.S. Masters list reviews, and he actually has a shot to get in the U.S. Masters. He's on the Friday night play-in, so everybody pull for Once Bitten and send him a note or something wishing him good luck. He's taking the Bretonnians, so best of luck to him for that. And I'm sure we'll see how that all works. They went through every single list comparison. I thought that was a really cool 5-part series. So definitely worth a watch over on his channel. Not that he needs any additional attention from me. But it's definitely a very cool thing.
Well,
the other
to be switched on to the Warhammer universe and tournament scene for people to go check that out, I think. And who knows, they might people who are unaware of it might clue in and decide they want to be a part of that in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great scene, and he has the person who put together the U.S. Masters, and he's a great guy. We won't hold the fact that he plays a Chaos Dwarf army against him, and he's. The last time Once Bitten fought him, as he points out repeatedly in several of the videos, the Bretonnians were victorious over the filthy Chaos Dwarves. So, the side of justice did win there. So, best of luck to him for this weekend. The other big thing that happened this week was we got some potential new rumor droppage of units that are definitely surviving. Now is the time where you get out your salt shaker and take everything and just start pouring out the grains in 9th edition. So, Tom, would you like to talk about, certainly you don't have to read the whole list, but would you like to talk about some of the stuff?
Absolutely. Let me, hold on just a minute. There we go. So on Daka, the Whisper of Truth, somebody that we'd gotten some resources from last week, kind of came with a list. You shouldn't be surprised by it. It showed up on Warseer as well, but most of the units that were included on it were things that have been released in the last 2 years, so it's not real surprising. Amongst the Elven units that were quote-unquote confirmed, the were some of the Wood Elf units that people had anticipated: Erloth, the Eternal Guard dual kit, the Sisters of the Thorn dual kit, the Witch Elves dual kit, and the Cauldron of Blood dual kit. So, and the Tree Men. So, and then there were a number of other ones. Some of the surprising changes, and then obviously most of the end time stuff. What did not make any, did not have any showing on the list was any lizardmen. And among the orcs and goblin units, what was kind of surprising was savage orcs made the list. Night goblins made the list. The Ragnarok and most of the spider units that we had reported on last week actually did not make the list. And he said he did note that the list is incomplete, but those are the units that he kind of pieced together from the conversations that he's had from his source inside GW. He anticipates, for example, Sisters of Avalorn will continue into the next edition, even though he hasn't really heard anything about it. Which, as people have pointed out, the aesthetics from the Sisters of Avalorn and like the Eternal Guard and the Sisters of the Thorn, for that matter, are very similar. Yeah, no, Ragnarok. He did note that the Iron Guts, the common orcs and goblins, Leadbelchers, Noblars, all are going away. And he noted that the orcs and ogres are trading in iron and gunpowder for more traditional measures. So I think we're going to see more generally savage forces. But instead of the savage goblins, we'll probably end up seeing more night goblins as kind of the hallmark there. He did clarify later on as people were interacting with him. And some additional comments that he made for 9th edition coming up was that 7 champions and an army of light, whatever that means. No more lizardmen, but they will still be playable. No more Noblars or skinks, and then those are getting rolled into the goblins. Now, I don't know if he intended to imply that the lizardmen are being rolled into the orc and goblin and ogre hordes, but it seemed to be part of that discussion. No more beastmen. Elves are going to become more Eldari. Units are going to take on aspects of their gods. And then he said, ultimately, and this was a change from some of the rumors we had heard last week, which was that the game's going to become more fantasy-like, with less cannons and less war machines, but all in all more magical. It's not just that humans are getting empowered by the gods, but all factions are going to experience this.
Well, that's a big bomb.
Yeah. I thought that was a very interesting set of
rumors. For the exclusions than anything else, though. Unfortunately, it's probably going to lead to a lot of nerd rage. Like, I've invested millions of dollars in this, and now all my crap has got to go in the garbage.
Yes, no way you could ever play it again or be proud you collected it and painted it, or play an army from an older edition. No reason any of those things would be possible.
It's not like any of us have counts as models in our armies.
Right. No, I use only the most official of GW product, ordered directly from the GW website, as they command. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it was interesting, and it's worth pointing out that the list wasn't all-inclusive. It was, the person very much did say, hey, there's probably more. This is just what I know for sure. I think the real interesting things that surfaced there to me were the idea of the ogres losing a lot of the gunpowder stuff and becoming more savage. I think obviously that chain is already there. I mean, you don't have a unit called a Slaughtermaster and have wildcats and hunters and stuff without having some, concept of savagery in the army. And the gunpowder stuff was never really theirs to begin with. It was always sort of borrowed tech, right? So I think that
they were getting it from the Chaos Dwarves, right? Like in the most recent incarnation. Like
I think that was the story in the most recent incarnation. Yeah, I'm not sure that's what it was originally. When ogres first came out, I think their cannons were literally just
Empire
looted cannons they had stole, and shoved crap into.
So can we just do some wild speculation here and
I love wild speculation.
That's what this segment is.
The scaling back of the technology is because the dwarfs are gone and all the dwarfs are dead and there's no more dwarf kingdoms. So therefore there's no technological advancement. They can't teach people this crap.
Can I jump in? Of those units that got listed, like 5 of the units that are staying are dwarves.
Okay.
Joseph Bugman, Runesmith, Ironbreakers, Iron Drake, Dual Kit, and Gyrocaptor, and Grim Burloxen. So those are going to stay, but those are probably getting merged into the Forces border. But continue. Wild speculation, go.
No, that's as far as I was going with that. I mean, just throwing out some nonsense to generate some panic.
Yeah. At the end of Thankful, so spoiler alert, as always, why are you watching a rumor show and a rumor segment if you're not unaware of the fact that there might be spoilers?
You should never say spoiler alert again.
It's just the show has a permanent spoiler alert tag.
Never say it again.
Yeah, at the end of Thankwol, there is obviously most of Nuln, and which Nuln is famous in the Empire for being like the ironworks, the place where cannons and steam tanks and guns come from. It's not the only place, but it is like the major home of it. The entire ironworks district gets swallowed by the earth because the Skaven blow out the foundation of it and literally take a quarter-mile chunk of the city down into the ground and then steal everything and run away, which is fantastic. That is some, again, as with all things that the Skaven do in the Thankwol book, that is some James Bond supervillain level right there. That is just fantastic.
They're a can-do group of people. There's nothing that they can't figure out.
Exactly. That's why I love them. They don't look at the moon and say, how could we get there? They look at the moon and say, how could we get that down here? And that's what I like to see. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing. I mean, I think that I'm going to be fascinated to see what does become of the Lizardmen. Because it's, we keep making jokes about the Lizardmen going in their spaceships and such, but that's not really actually what happened in the story. I mean, yes, some of the Slann do shoot off. There is this sort of like weird spaceship-like aggression of the Slann and some of their close cohorts, but there's still a lot more Lizardmen than what got in their little ships and flew away. And Sauruses without Slann and Skinks to control them are basically just brutal, savage creatures that are sub-intelligent. Even a lot of the Skinks aren't too brilliant on their own. Like there's a lot more variance in the Skink cohorts of how intelligent they are, and certainly things like Kroxigor are just big dumb monsters, and all their dinosaurs. So I think there could be a really interesting way to take that army, the remnants of that army, and fold them into someone else, while still allowing for a future possibility where you reintroduce something new and break them off. And that's another good point. It's not like whatever happens at launch with Ninth is what we have 2 years into Ninth. I mean, we have to be aware that on that limited release schedule, and we're going to talk more about that when we get to the too much portion later, the how much is too much. The idea of how the limited release schedule could impact that, but at the very least, what it means is it becomes much easier to introduce a new force.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's that's a good transition. There was one more rumor segment that I thought we may want to pay attention to. Now, this is going to be of our rumor section where this already disclaimer. This is the extra salt segment, such that this came from a poster who also supposedly has a connection inside, but they only have like 2 posts of their history, so they're brand new to this business. They just created an account, and that came out this last week on the on Warseer, and that conversation had it confirmed a lot of things we've been hearing, but it had a couple new elements that are, I would argue, that are probably going to be good news for those that are actually wanting 9th edition to succeed. And so one of the things was that what we're going to see is a box of books. So a multi-book pack offering that has both a skirmish book and a large-scale battle book. Okay. That points, as we know them, are still going to be there, but they're going to be less of an issue, such that like what we're seeing with some of the battle scrolls, there are going to be more unit building army forces from predetermined lists. Such that it looks like, and he wasn't real specific on this, but he kind of hinted around the idea that rather than building a force carte blanche from points, you're going to get so many the equivalent of what would be like so many core selections, a special selection, and a rare selection, or something along those lines. And so it would be a very parsed down force building system, and it looks like units would be like what you would get out of a box. So you buy a box, and that's what you put on the table for that selection. And he said there won't be calculations of percentage points in the same way, with options, quote, more restrained than the current army books. he said round bases do seem to be a thing, but it sounds like certain units and all characters will be on rounds moving forward. So rounds aren't like a portion of the game necessarily, but rounds are the effect of a change of rules. Anything that is not part of like a blocked unit goes on rounds. And so like Screaming Bells and Cauldrons of Blood and characters, which was the interesting thing, are all going to go on rounds. And what the implication was is that they'll get attached to a unit, just like a Cauldron would or just like a Screaming Bell would, but they won't actually join like the ranked infantry. And so they won't get ranked up with everybody else, but will get attached to units when they quote-unquote join a unit. But they will stay on rounds. He also did say that but models that have previously come with square bases will stay on square bases and they'll play normally, so there won't be an issue there. He suggested that there's a quote-unquote Bretonnian book waiting in the wings, but it isn't an army book per se. It looks more like an end-time style book. There'll be units in there that will be Bretonnian-esque units, but they're not going to be made for a specific army or a specific faction, but for quote-unquote like a forces of order or a multi-faction type of thing. And that's what he kind of implied, is that moving forward there will be releases that will be multi-faction units that you could play in multiple different units. And then, let's see, again, there's quite a bit of stuff here. He said Skaven, the amount of stuff approaching is unprecedented, quote unquote. I thought Vince, you'd appreciate that. He said although he has no visibility on release dates, he said they're not going to be Skaven as we knew them, but a sort of evolution type, very nice and inspired. And they won't be merging with Chaos in the next edition. And then finally, he said on the whole, fantasy is going to slowly morph towards more unique monsters and characters and elite units of 2 to 5 figures. So armies are going to be smaller, but the figures themselves are going to be larger. He suggested there will always be a place for a large infantry unit, but didn't have access to the exact rules, so he's not sure how valuable large infantry blocks are going to be. So a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, there's a few things you touched on there, and there's a couple things that I think I want to comment on. First of all, to talk about this round-based thing that's getting everybody's knickers in a twist. What I kind of envision as something that's a possibility here is very much like the game of War Master. I don't know if you two guys ever were exposed to that one.
Absolutely.
It was a tiny 10 mil size. Yep. But here's how the mechanic of that worked: is you bought your unit and you blocked them up and you ranked them together, and then you had a character which you put on a little circle, and you would attach it to that unit. It took up no space on the table aside from physically, but as far as gameplay, it was a non-factor. It was considered to be in the unit, but you tuck it on the side to represent that it was there leading it. So if they want to play around with that sort of thing and have it as a unit attachment, then that's probably where that makes the most sense to me. That you would put something on a round base because it doesn't need to integrate into that unit physically on the field to take up space, but it's just something that doesn't take up space but offers its effect.
Yeah, so I think
that's reasonable.
Yeah, I do remember War Master. Like one of the first great examples of Tomb Kings there. War Master, Tomb Kings had a whole War Master list, which made me love it. Yeah. And I think that the other thing that I hear there is I hear the echoes of Kings of War, right? Because in Kings of War you have these sort of set unit sizes. You don't pull figs off the back when they. I'm not saying that that's part of this, but like it's more of this set block. You're buying this block, and it is a thing, and that's the block. And the unit has like a strength in it. You don't pull figs off when they're dead and stuff. And a lot of people praise it for being faster. Now, you know, that is going to be a big adjustment because if I really do just buy a unit and it's a set amount of guys, you know, like one has to ask the question of how much value is there in being able to select the difference between 28 guys in your block and 32 guys in your block, right? Like those are decision points we make now. I don't know that there's much value in that, but is there value in between 20 guys and 40 guys? Well, that's clearly a much different unit, right? And that is also a decision point we make now. And so you have to wonder, like, do they scale like that? Is it going to be like a chunk thing where you have like a smaller size unit and then a medium unit, a big unit, so I can take 10, 20, 40. Those are like, and this is how you can build that out with that. And I think if that were to be the world we lived in, I would probably be okay with that because I generally I mean, you know, the only time I tend to throw a couple extras in is when I've like, well, I've got 6 points I've got to burn off or something, right? So I'll throw in 3 extra slaves or something like that.
Yeah. And the other thing that Tom mentioned there that I kind of have an envisionment of is what you talked about at first, in that you would buy an army group. And this was kind of touched on in the Thankwall End Times book, where it offered those formations, like the Slayer formation, where you're forced to take X number of units of Slayers in these various units, and then once you have that package, then you can choose a couple of things to add to it, but that's your army chunk, and you start there. So if they want to offer that kind of thing up for Bretonnians or Savage Skink factions and things like that, I think that would be a fine thing as well.
Yeah, I think as long as it's not the only way you can build an army, right? Like, as long as there's still some kind of loose mechanic where I can choose a character and some blocks of infantry and some cavalry units and whatever, and I can sort of construct my force from whole cloth, then I think that the sort of battle formation thing is only a positive, right? Because it does let you play the game in different ways, make different unusual choices, et cetera, et cetera. I think in a world with both, it's all positive.
In a clarification post that the individual... So this is all coming from Warseer, the 9th edition roundup discussion in the rumors thread, and on the last page, the individual had posted a clarification, and one thing that it seemed to be is that the factions themselves are going to be a lot more porous, and that you're going to probably have a lot more overlap in building some forces. So I think that. So it seems like, again, some units are going to qualify for multiple forces, and so there's going to be a lot more bleeding between the identities of what we've traditionally known, and so like shoring up to make sure that you have like a ranged unit of the appropriate type is going to be less of an issue. So if, for example, we live in a world where everybody gets as base, for example, 3 core, like 1 character, 3 core units, 2 special units, and a rare unit. I'm completely making these numbers up. But in that world, let's say I wanted a range unit that's a special. Well, maybe I don't have that in my faction. Well, it seems like you'll be able to pull from other factions, or there'll be like multi-faction units that you can pull in to kind of shore up some of those weaknesses. So I don't know. It looks promising. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've already seen that before. It's not like that would be brand new tech. I mean, the Dogs of War were a thing that existed for a long time, and that's exactly what they were. The Dogs of War, this unit, Al-Mukhtar's Desert Dogs, or whatever, Lumpengroup's Halflings. You know, this unit can be taken by blah, 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 and it listed like 5 armies, or can be part of an entire Dogs of War army, right? It's like, and now in the end times, we've seen that too. Like, it tends to stay in faction now, where it's like this unit can be taken by Vampire Counts or Tomb Kings or Undead Legions or whatever, you know. But we've been primed for that already, and as long as the bleed is, I think there's a fine line you have to walk from that. And so it's all about the detail. The devil's really in the details with that one. If it's a small amount of it, it's great. It's fun. It lets you build different armies. It's cool. If it's all over the place, then it dilutes too much army, like, faction or army coherency to the point where they have an established identity. So it is going to be a tough line to walk, for sure.
I hear that, but like...
I just want to interject and say one thing. I think that I agree with you, and I'm worried, if there's anything that I'm worried about with this amalgamation of armies, etc., through the Warhammer world, it's the dilution of the character and the individuality that you can do with it. I mean, from my perspective, one of the famous things that's about Warhammer is that you can create a hero of your own, and you can create thematic armies of your own, and it gives you that flexibility. So if there's any small iota of worry about how they're going to restructure armies in the future, is to take a lot of that away. That's really it.
Certainly. What I would just simply say, to kind of build on what you were talking about, Vince, like, from a game design standpoint, I can imagine this kind of tech being rolled out, okay? So just, you know, you said you're worried about some things just not fitting or being too widely available. Like, I could imagine Spirit Hosts being available to, for example, whatever Undead Legion's faction comes out, or in any force that has a spellcaster that is Lore of Undeath.
Yep. No, that's a great point. Is that there could be? You're absolutely right. It's not because they don't have to just say this army and that's it, and you can always take it. It could be this army under these circumstances, X win Y. It's a great game design trick, and you see that kind of thing in role-playing games all the time. There's no reason why that tech couldn't be deployed here. And then what it forces you into is like, yes, you can do this, but there's a thematic piper to be paid, as it were. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, if I recall, when I first played Orcs and Goblins ages ago, to get, for example, you had to have a Forest Goblin unit. It's plain and simple, right? So it extended a little bit further than it is now. I mean, to get a Goblin Fanatic in your army, you got to have a unit of Night Goblins. We already have that. But to extend it to characters and heroes or rare choices, I mean, to draw a parallel between Skaven, you remember the previous book where you had to have Clan Rats as a mainstay unit before you could pick any other unit, right? Couldn't have more units of something else than you had of Clan Rats. And I think that's just as good a structural element that they can use to design Warhammer armies as anything else. So it's fine.
Yeah, agreed. It's one of those things where everything is always an evolution on what we've seen before. We've trod so much ground in 31 years, 32 years of Warhammer. It's hard to have a completely new idea, right? Like there's probably been echoes of almost anything we're going to do in any choice we make. But yeah, so there we go. Some new rumors for everybody. All right, lots of fun stuff there. Let's move on to the next segment. Hobby time. All right, let's talk about hobby time. What's on everybody's table? Kieran, you're the special guest. Why don't you begin? What have you been hobbying on lately?
Well, lately not much, or not much that I want to be. I ran an event with our club here in Edmonton at the end of January, and so the month and a half leading up we're busily as a group every weekend or games, but had to push. So it was kind of a hobby hiatus, Reavers, and start to paint those because I intended to do those, but didn't. So I got some basic 15 more of them to make all. And I also of mine, and that is I got my very first dwarf model. So it's the first pebble in the avalanche of dwarven might that is going to hit in the future.
Oh no, not more stunties. That's the last thing we all need. All right, well, very good.
So that'll be coming.
Well, very good. I look forward to it. I look forward to lots of pictures on the PMP. Absolutely. Tom, what about yourself? What are you hobbying
on? Let's see. I finished the let me see if I can get some light here. My Rogue Idol finally. I was working on last week. Yeah, there we go.
Mm-hmm.
So got him done, and I'll have some photos up on the PMP soon, and then as fate would have it, my I backed both the Bones and Wrath of Kings Kickstarter, and both of my orders arrived within like a 3-day period. So I've literally been swimming in miniatures right now, trying to unpack things. So I think we had like
in your Wrath of Kings stuff, because I
say what?
I said I'm oddly interested in that you got your Wrath of Kings stuff because I backed that one as well, and have nothing.
Oh, I was complaining like no other on the Kickstarter thread. If you go back for the last week or so, I was on there almost every day, bitching and moaning. So, but yeah, I got mine. I haven't unpacked them, like started putting models together, but I have a pretty large Hadros faction, which are the Sea People, and I have some one of the Nasir forces, which is the like werewolves and vampires. So.
See, I've almost well, I don't want to get off on a tangent about Kickstarters here, but that's That's the only Kickstarter that I've supported, and it was, as you know, Tom, that was a year and a half ago, and I don't even care about it anymore. It might show up in the next month or so, and it will probably stew in a box for years.
I will say I cracked open the just again. I don't want to stay on this too long. I cracked open the Twilight Night from the Kingdom of Death, the crossover for the stuff, and the miniature was beautiful, that resin miniature. So I think that there's probably going to be a lot in there that'll be good fodder for Counts as miniatures. I think I have some of the Orson Cavaliers, which are these big like octopus creatures, and I think I'm going to be using them for my Dark Elf Force, probably as Charybdises.
Charybdis, there you go. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of using the Garitzi vampire blood chicks as blood letters for my all-female Khorne demon army. So, yeah, lots of stuff. Lots of good stuff there.
That's a good segue to tell us about what you're doing.
Yes, not Khorne. Everybody saw I posted up the Khorne cannon, but no, I just got my whole new army, and so it is time to begin on that. And because I like to rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic, look at that. How's that grab you? Oh, lost one.
Yeah, that's fun.
Looks like a bunch of peasants. That's what
that does look like a bunch of peasants, because that's what it is. The first thing I decided was the right choice to do was factory paint 53 men-at-arms, who are almost done now. They just need some basing work and some shield work.
So that's about half the models that you'll need then.
Yes, everything else is knights. And the beautiful part about, well, I mean, you know, there's like a trebuchet and stuff, but most everything else is knights. And the beautiful part about, I like painting as men-at-arms. I think they're great models. And the beautiful part about painting them is you can do this in 50 model, like this is a 53 model chunk, the biggest I've ever factory line. So it took me maybe 3 days, which is lengthy. And but then every night you get to do individually. Every night is his own little beautiful tapestry, his own little unique snowflake. So I'm looking forward to jumping into them. Yeah, that should be fun.
I'm gonna latch onto that, and I'm gonna refer to each Bretonnian knight as a unique snowflake from now on.
Absolutely. He's a little unique snowflake with his little wolf shield. He's adorable. Look at him just flutter through the battlefield.
Don't let anybody tell you that you're not different.
Exactly. Who's a little unique knight? You are. Yes, you are. All right. So with hobby time out of the way, let's move on to our main segment for tonight, which is how much is too much? So Kieran, you had actually suggested this topic. So, and I like it. I liked it very much. So why don't, if you want, why don't you sort of prime us off on this and kind of get us going of how you want to discuss this topic, the angle you want to attack it from.
Well, I was kind of just thinking of it as perspective as looking at all kinds of different aspects of the hobby, and I guess every once in a while I sort of look around in my basement at the the several painted armies, and like there's, just to give a quick rundown, I got 8 painted fully armies for fantasy. I got 3 for 40K that haven't seen the light of day in 5 years. I got stuff for various other games in the cabinets or buried in a closet, etc. And sometimes when I'm down there trying to find something in that closet, it occurs to me, have I just gone too far? like have I? And when was that I went too far? If I can trace my timeline back. So that's sort of where that thought started, and I wanted to see if I'm alone in that, or if there's many other brothers in arms that also feel the same way, that they have gone too far and there's no turning back, or there's some regret about it, or how that feels. So let's start with there, but then there's some other various spin-offs and how we can kind of look down on how much is too much for smaller aspects and isolated parts of doing the hobby. So maybe I'll ask that of you, Tom. You're relatively new to Warhammer, but how about the hobby as a whole?
Would you like to answer with your 3 feet tall of bones on the table behind you? You sent me a picture that was just a 4x6 Warhammer table of 3 feet tall of bones stacked on each other, as though it was like a ball pit of bones miniatures.
I am not the right person to be asking, because I would say that because of how I've kind of used eBay to stock my hobby, to fund my hobby over the last year, I've gotten a lot, like, so to put things in perspective, I started in August, and I'm sitting on about 10,000 points of High Elves. That's my main force. I have probably 6,000, a solid 6,000 probably of Orcs and Goblins, and almost all of it's custom built, like Forest Goblins, like Siege and all that stuff. I have probably 4,000 in Tomb Kings. And then I probably have probably 2,500 in Dark Elves, and probably another probably 1,000 in Wood Elves. So I probably have more than that. I probably have probably 2,000 in Wood Elves. So all that to say, I'm a real bad person to ask that.
It's not bad. Like this isn't here to make you feel guilty about it. Obviously,
Sure.
You've collected 6 armies and a ridiculous amount of stuff in 6 months, which is pretty rapid.
Yeah.
But how do you feel about that? Like, do you feel like, holy shit, what have I done? I'm still shopping on eBay because I need more.
No, I've toned down the eBay shopping right now. No, but like, to put things, I mean, I do have, as we just noted, I mean, just to step back and look at a bigger picture, even of my miniature collection. I have 2 forces of Kings of War that just came in. I'm sorry, not Kings of War, of Wrath of Kings. I have 3 armies of Kings of War coming this summer. I have a vampire army, I have a Chaos Dwarf army, and I have an Ogre army. And I did the math, and like I should have completely fieldable forces from what Kings of War was offering. And then I am also sitting on probably, like, did you ever play D&D, Kieran?
Not since I was a junior high school kid.
Fair enough. So back in the 2000s, they released these like plastic pre-painted D&D miniatures.
Yeah, seen them.
And I got to the point where when I quit like 1 or 2 sets before the end, and I was missing 7 miniatures from a complete set. With all commons, I had like 8 of. All uncommons, I had 2 to 4 of, and I had at least 1 to 2 of every rare. So, like, and all of that's put in a case, divided up, and so like I have a lot of miniatures.
But that part there sounds like more of a collector aspect of it. Wouldn't you say that's true? Miniature, is that why you do that?
I mean, we use them for D&D. So, and when we play like RPGs, like, so we can basically represent almost anything. So, yeah. So again, like I love terrain, as you can tell. I have most of GW's kits, and I've recently picked up a bunch of Dwarven Forge sets, and so I'm all over the place.
Yeah, I think you're really the answer. I think to the question is, I think there's 2 things that can trip you up, right? And it's an interesting thing of like what leads you to collect more armies or more stuff. So the way I see it, there are 2 main drivers for the additional army collection thing. Okay, one is positive and one is negative. So the negative one first. You play your 1 army, and either you don't like it, or you play it a lot, or it's one-dimensional, and so you get bored with it. And you go, okay, well, I've done this army a lot, and it doesn't have that many different ways to be played. So I'm going to go try something new, and you go get a second army. Now, maybe when I say negative, I mean, I don't mean it's not a positive thing that you get a second army and have fun with it. I just mean it was a negative sort of moment of frustration or boredom or whatever that led you to the decision, right? And the other thing I would say is, and Tom, I think part of what you collected is from a more positive moment of decision, which is with like the recent Legion rules and stuff. You said, oh, well, I have High Elves, but now with the Legion rules, hey, I could put some Dark Elves or Wood Elves in this army that I really like. Why don't I go get some of those and, and model and play with those as well? So, in the end, you could still be angry with either purchase or happy with either purchase, but one of them is being tripped off by a sort of positive moment of decision where you're like, I want to do this because it's going to expand the thing I love, i.e. main army, whereas the other one is by doing this, I'm leaving behind my main army, which, or whatever it is. And I think that there's certainly got to be a point where, like Kieran, you said you have 8 armies. Like, I've got to believe that you don't love all of them equally, right? That there are, like, let's say 2 of them that you're like, screw those guys.
You're right. I'm not an equal opportunity parent.
Yes.
I can say that I love one child more than the other.
Yeah, exactly. They're not children. With Warhammer armies, we can pick favorites.
That's right.
I mean, what I would say is that, like, talking about the decision point of reaching out, like, it really was with the Legion rules that I was like, wow, I could pull Dark Elves and Wood Elves, and, like, part of me, like, if you're talking about I mean, Vince knows this, obviously, but from a psychographic profile, like a gamer psychographic profile, I'm part Johnny and part Spike. And so as soon as I get more units out there, like, yes, I want to make neat, inventive things and put things together in neat new combinations, but I'm driven to win also. And so when I see things that are more optimal or more mechanically just filthy, I'm likely to go, hey, I want that. But even more than that, some of those, like, I really like the models, and I really loved a bunch of the Wood Elf stuff. Like, I really liked a lot of the Wood Elf models, but the problem I was running into was, like, I didn't want a full force of Wood Elves, and so I was like, oh, well, I might buy those someday just to kind of paint up and have for D&D or whatever. But now, like, I was able to actually integrate them into an army, and because of the new Legion rules. So, if this is the direction they're going with Ninth, it pulled me in, and it had me pick up some Corsairs and some Sisters of the Thorn and a number of other models. So yeah.
Yeah. So you've essentially justified that in a lot of ways. That your conclusion is
Absolutely.
You don't have too much. You have a lot of stuff, but you don't have too much stuff, right?
And yes is the answer. And if I ever want to get rid of it, like, I know my way around eBay. I know what my stuff's worth, and if I want to move it, I can move it. Even if the market crashes, I know that I'll still be able to move my stuff in one form or another.
Okay. Well, how about you and your collection, Vince? Do you ever has this thought ever crossed your mind, where you spend time lording over your 10,000 plus points of Tomb Kings and think, ooh?
I'm watching a Tomb Kings auction right now. Does that answer your question? I was like,
bravo.
It was like, I don't have a Cetra model yet, and I could use, I have one Calidia, but I really like that model, and she was metal, and I didn't paint her when I was at my best. I should get a second Calidia, and there was, one auction, and I need another kitty, and there was one auction that had, all this stuff in it, and I was like, I have to get up on that one. I mean, yeah, this is a lot of Tomb Kings, right, and even some vampire counts, as we can see the sneaky Coven throne hiding in here. But, no, I don't actively look for as much with them. But if I see something cool or decide I want to expand, I think the answer is don't be sad about your purchases. Like, my rule is think 2 weeks on any purchase more than $20 with an army, right? Don't just go, I want this thing and buy it. Sit there for at least 2 weeks and mull over it. If it's more than $20 for a model. If you throw in $10 at some tiny thing on eBay, fine, whatever. But
I would like to call bullshit on that.
That's 100% true. That's my method.
Are you telling me that you spent 2 weeks thinking about deciding if you wanted to buy a Vermin Lord and a Thankwall and some Storm Fiends?
Oh, well, with Skaven, I knew that was going to be
12 seconds at most.
Yes, it was absolutely. The decision was made in 5 seconds, but sure, I spent that long thinking about it. I had to, because it got rumored and it got spoiled, right, 3 weeks before it happened. So I had the requisite amount of time to think about it. But this Bretonnian army was a big thing, right? How long did I think about this before I actually got the army? I started thinking about it in July. I bought my first model at Gen Con in August because I found a Grail Relic Way for $15 and argued the guy down to 12, which, it was already in a ridiculous deal, and I was like, that's too much money because I'm cheap as all get out. And it was the first model, and then I was like, all right, well, if I see something cheap, and maybe $8 for a Peg Knight here or something, if I could find things cheap, I picked them up. And then eventually I was like, all right, Bretonnians, I'm all in. And it took me 5-6 months to make that decision. my Skaven are in a class all by themselves. I've been playing them since 1998. I know I love them.
Yeah.
I have loved them every minute, every fig for 16 years. I will buy every Skaven model they make that isn't a total piece or, you know, a doubling of what I already have. Like, I didn't buy the Warlord and the new Grey Seer because I thought they were crap. But I did buy everything else, and without reservation or regret.
Mm-hmm. So, to just move on to another thought then, have you guys ever gotten to a point with an army, past or present, that you currently own or had in the past, where you go, you know, 5,000 points, that's the stopping point. That's where the limit should be.
Yeah, I mean, I know for myself I did that, and part of where I got to that point was because for my orcs and goblins, like I wanted, like I was set on doing a forest goblin force, and so like I went and to put things like I didn't want any metal on them. It was all stones and bones and sticks, like that. Like that is their force. Like I don't want orcs in there, so everything has to be goblins. Everything's forest goblins. Like savage orcs couldn't even have a spot in there, and so like I had to go out like and find like goblin models that looked like savages to proxy for my savage orcs, for example. So that said, there's only so many things that I'm going to be able to proxy or that I want to proxy in my working goblin force, and because I'm building all of it myself, I built all of my own siege equipment. Yeah, there's a real limit to that, like of just realistically what I'm going to field in a 2,500 point army, give or take a few models. So I don't see myself buying more orcs and goblins anytime soon, because to really push out into some of the other options, I have to move outside of kind of the constraints of what that army was when I started building it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but more pointedly, what I was asking with my question is: have you ever thought in your mind that I should stop at X number of points, not to fill your theme or to get all the selections. Like I understand that about Empire. Just where I'm going with this is Empire. I want to have something for everything, and it's one of those armies that has the most broad selection. Orcs and Goblins being the other one that has the most broad selection. So you can, to get everything that's possible in that army list, you're gonna go beyond the regular amount of points that you would for another army just to have it available. But more pointedly, my question is there a point limit to an army that you just really isn't acceptable for you to go beyond?
I've never thought about it in terms of points, but I thought about it in terms of units, right? Like my Wood Elf army is there. I can run the Wood Elf army that I like to run. I only play them occasionally when I'm in. They're my palate cleanser. They are the sorbet of armies when I'm in the mood for a very different game. And I've got everything I need for them. I've got, you know, my blocks of infantry that I want. I've got the horse people that I want, or whatever, you know, like. So, you know, I might add to them a little with the Kings of War thing, but that's just because it's there and it was a unique opportunity to do so. But it's replacing some older figs. Like I already have them. I got it on the cheap. Why not? But they're where I want them to be. I don't ever search for more models for them. I'm not, you know, I'm not trying to hunt them down. I'm good with them. So it's not points. It's just like I can field the army I want to field. Good.
Yeah. Okay. So you've reached a limit of I've got the units that I need for this and no more units necessary.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Whereas with Skaven, it's like it's exactly the opposite. Skaven for me are the Empire for what you mentioned, right? I want to be able to run anything I can possibly imagine. If I want to put 7 Warpfire throwers on the table, I better have 7 Warpfire throwers. I better be able to do 10 Jezzails, and you know I better be able to do 2 Screaming Bells and a Furnace, and I better, you know, and so on and so forth. Like any ridiculous, stupid combination I can think of, no matter how terrible, should be able to be fielded, just because they are my love. They are my little rat soul. So yes, you know, like there's no limit.
I think it depends. I think you did hit upon it when you use your Empire example, and that I think that it depends on the army. I think some armies are more open to having these kind of crazy permutations, and some aren't. So, like at my High Elves, like I'm at probably about 10,000, and I need basically a Sisters Avalor box, and I'll probably add a Sky Cutter to my forces just to have one. and then at that point, like, I'm done. You know, like, I can't see adding anything else high elves. Like, there's just whatever I would want doesn't exist.
Aren't those the last two things you painted in your high elves, Kieran?
What's that?
Aren't those the last two things you painted for your high elves? Sisters of Avalorn and a Sky Cutter?
No, I did the Sky Cutter the day that it came out. Well, not the day that it came out, but shortly afterwards. But Sisters of Avalorn pretty recently, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a normal chariot you did. You did do some kind of chariot recently, right?
I did some Tyrannog chariots, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right.
The Sky Cutter is a sea cutter. It's got a manta ray pulling it.
Nice.
Instead of an eagle.
Nice. All right. So I think that was good. I mean, I think we wanted to take this discussion into another, like, maybe level. The other thing that I wanted to sort of touch on with the how much is too much is beyond just like the size of your army or the collection or whatever. Is there I think you raised some interesting sort of points there in what you said and what you had we had talked about before, and what you had mentioned. And to me, I think there's how many points is too big of an army to play in a game? Like, where are you comfortable? If somebody says, let's play a game of this size, you go, that's too big. I don't want to do that. Is it just the grand army point? Is it 3,000?
No, it's at that point it becomes a time limit restriction with the lives that we lead, I think, more than anything. I mean, I have played games where we have 10,000 plus points, and I guess in that regard, if I'm playing a head-to-head game, I'll probably say that 5,000 points is a little too much for two people playing. When you incorporate multiple people and you have it beyond there, it just becomes a slog for the last 2 hours of it, and you don't even care who wins, right? I've been roped into a number of times where there's 20,000 to 30,000 points on the table between 6 players, and it goes for 9 hours, and I'm on the floor at hour 7 having a nap under the table, and I don't even know who won.
Right.
And I don't remember it, aside from the fact that it was terribly long. So yeah, I think it's time limit that is more of the factor there.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the game just sort of breaks down at a certain point because of the amount of time it takes to resolve it. Like, you can only do so much. I do a lot of 2-on-2 games, and those end up being 4,000 or 5,000 points effectively against each other. And, you know, even those take a long time to play through, right? Like, I would never go above 2,500 points for an individual army on that 2-on-2 game, because it just suddenly you're like, well, let's block off the next 5-6 hours of our life because this is what we're going to be doing. I hope everybody's got their endurance hat on, right? Because I hope everybody brought their talisman of endurance because they're going to need it.
And their addle depends.
Yeah. Yeah, Tom, what about you?
I really can't speak to it. I mean, I've played 2,500 point games at the top end.
Sure.
So I haven't played any. I mean, I haven't played any really large games.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much to this. That's why I really love this suggestion, Kieran, and I'm going to absolutely boldface steal this as a future rotating item because I think there's so much more to touch on here, and you mentioned some of them. How much time painting a model? How much time do you sit down for a single hobby session? How many points for a single fig? Right? Like, what's an unreasonable number of points for one fig in your army, or something like that?
Oh yeah, you could spin this off into all kinds of other things that we thought about, like how much time do you spend thinking about the hobby, doing army lists, how many games do you play in a week, in a month, etc. You can use this for all those levels.
Yep. And I think that it's a good point. To, like, I certainly spend a lot of time doing this and hobbying. And, you know, if you're going to talk about, one of the things that was mentioned is how much hobby time in a single session. Just as Tom mentioned that he's the wrong person to ask for the collection piece, I'm the wrong person to ask for in a single session, because when Friday rolls around, I'm like, all right, sweet, 20 hours straight of painting, go. And, like, I'll do 20, 22-hour paint sessions of just not stopping, not getting up, well, except maybe to go to the bathroom. I'm not wearing Depends, so I do have to go to the restroom occasionally. But, like, just, you know, and I don't get tired of it. I love it so much. And but I know that there are a lot of people who their how much is a much lower number. An hour or two painting, and they're ready to cash in the chips. You know, that
yes. Could be. All right, so you want to leave it there for now and resume the how much is too much some other time?
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's really good. If you have your own how much is too much, they're out there in YouTube land, you know, put it in the comments below. Or if you want us to talk about a particular thing or question in the future, we'll be happy to bring it up. All right, let's move on to our Q&A portion. Got some questions here. So first off, let's start with Matira. He had some questions for us. We'll all just kind of round robin this, and Kieran, you can start us off since you're the guest. His first question was, have you ever regretted an army that you purchased and or painted?
Purchased, maybe. It was a couple years ago that I bought some extra stuff for an Orc and Goblin army, mainly from a guy that was looking to make some cash quick, and I sort of thought that, you know, I could use some extra stuff. I don't really need it, but you need money, so I'll give you money and you give me stuff, and I haven't done much with it, so that's a mild bit regrettable, I guess. But that guy went and spent that money, so, you know, made his world better, I hope.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely.
As far as painting, I kind of think that everybody feels the same about the first army they ever painted, because obviously you progress as a painter and you progress as a hobbyist, so you might look back fondly and say, yeah, this is the first skink that I ever painted, and oh my god, is it ugly. So I feel that way about the first Lizardmen army that I ever did, yeah.
Yeah, I have a big red and yellow communist steam tank that's just painted horribly. That was one of the first models I ever painted, and I love it to death because it's absolutely, utterly terrible.
And you painted it to just look like the picture on the box, I suppose.
Oh no, it's all red and yellow, and like it has hammers and sickles on the side, as though it was like it is a Russian communist era steam tank for no reason whatsoever. I did 2 of them, and somebody stole one of them from me. Yeah, so unfortunate.
You should take that as a sort of a backhanded compliment, I guess.
I guess, yeah. They came in and communist my steam tank. I guess they were repossessing it for the state.
And it was desirable enough that they'd want to steal it.
Yeah, redistributing that steam tank wealth around. Tom, what about yourself?
No. Like, I'm not far enough into the hobby to really have any regrets. I don't know. But into the hobby 9 months before an edition change.
Sure.
No, not really. I mean, like I said, if I need to flip everything on eBay, I'll do so, and I'll do it gladly. And yeah.
Yeah, I would say I'm actually in the same boat. Like, I mean, in case you can't tell from what the armies that I have here, like, I mean, I honestly love all my armies, and I do not regret them. I love painting them and what I did with them, and they're a joy and a treasure, and I like them in their places. Now, some might not be my favorites, like I mentioned with my Wood Elves and how I treat them, but I value them for what they are, and that's why they're a small force, and you know they're there to be used in the right way, and that's why I don't put a lot of money into them. My Skaven I could play game after game after game after game after game and get a lot of fun out of. So I think it's about knowing what the army is going to mean to you and then investing appropriately. And the 2-week rule. There you go. Trust me on the 2-week rule, folks. It'll save you some regret. All right. Mishirum's next question. What army do you think is the most difficult hobby-wise to collect? I think we kind of touched on this already with those big toolbox armies where they have so many permutations, right? Orcs and Goblins, Empire, Skaven, all very tricky because of a high number of permutations, and also the fact that in a lot of those cases they can easily drift into horde army status, where under the current edition you're painting 40 halberdiers and 50 greatswords, and then you want to commit suicide.
You know, it's funny. Most people wouldn't consider this probably for high elves, but what I found is that I've ended up buying a whole bunch of high elves. The high elves have become that for myself because I can field most things are viable in the army, and so I'm like, oh, I could see myself building a force with 40 of these or 25 of these, and then so it made me want to buy everything.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I think I might give the nod for. I probably have three different answers for that for three very different reasons. Orcs and goblins, for the sake of the sheer breadth of different selections, because as we touched on a little bit earlier, you want to have the ability to represent all that the army list has to offer. So therefore, you're going to invest a hell of a lot more into orcs and goblins than you will in, say, Bretonnians, which is my answer to the hobby side of it. That's intimidating from the hobby angle because they are their own little special snowflakes, and the time to give a Bretonnian army justice is a lot longer, I think, because you're painting each individual model, or you should be, I think. That hobby investment is a lot more than the purchasing investment. And then my third answer would be the Chaos Dwarfs, because they're hardly a real army, and you got to work hard to get a hold of those models in the first place.
I was wondering if anybody was going to give the cheater answer of Chaos Dwarfs. Yeah, sure.
Hey, I've been staring down.
It's like, I hogged them all.
Had they not moved to this potential 9th edition, everything could change. Like, I was staring down a Chaos Dwarf army. Like, I was staring down making the Forge World like investment of having the Chaos Dwarf army. But yeah, the 9th edition scared me off.
Well, I'm glad we saved you from making a dumb decision. All right, so very good. And next, or last question from Atiram. If money and time were no object, what army would you start? Tom, did you just answer that question?
Absolutely. In a heartbeat, I would have a Chaos Dwarf army. No question about it.
And I'm going to echo that, but I'm going to say not the Forge World Chaos Army, but the big hats.
Go find the old...
Get the old Byzantine hats again.
Yeah.
Look, I'm going to do a plug real quick. Have you seen the Russian alternative miniatures on eBay? They were sculpted by an individual out of the Chaos Dwarf community, and their infantry still has the big hats, and they're pretty fantastic.
Yeah. See, I'll admit to you guys, I had a Chaos Dwarf army in the past, and that was one of the 2 armies that I've painted and sold in my life, and I still regret it.
Yeah,
I shouldn't.
That's the key, by the way, to having no regrets. I've learned this being a collector and other things, in selling that stuff. Don't sell it. It doesn't matter if you quit the game now. Don't sell it, because what's going to happen is in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, you're going to be like, oh, I want to pick that back up, and be like, oh, I had all that stuff, right, Vince?
Yeah, you know that. Yes, I had a bad experience with that with my Magic cards back in the day when I had a wonderful, beautiful collection of very old and impossible to get Magic cards and sold them off and learned a lesson, a very hard lesson, as they were impossible to get back a hold of later.
Yeah. Yeah, and it even means more so when you paint those models, right? Where you invest all that time into them as well. It's tough to value that. But anyway, that's a whole show topic.
Indeed. I am already starting my army that I would want, so that is Bretonnians, because I finally decided that I was happy enough with my painting that I felt like I could dedicate the time to them. So there you go. That's my answer. Yeah, absolutely. Living the dream. That's what I'm doing. Tremendous tells us that, first of all, there's no such thing as too much, and how dare we state otherwise. I'm not at all surprised that Lord T would think as such. And his second question was, if with a magic wand you could change, add, modify, or basically do one thing to your favorite army, what would it be?
Well, if I... First of all, you're going to make me decide what's my favorite army, which is a tough thing to do.
Well, how about this? With one of your armies, we'll just say that.
Well, so let's talk about, I guess my small niggly thing that I'd like to see fixed about the High Elves is I would like to either have a musician option in those Sisters of Avalorn or let them skirmish. I'll have either one. Doesn't matter.
Nice. That's fair.
Because then maybe it's functional.
Tom, if you're still thinking, I have mine.
Yeah, please go.
That's fine. I would wave my magic wand and make some monstrous cavalry for my Skaven, because there's a lot of, like, for all the crazy units Skaven have, there's a lot of unit types we're missing, you know, because, like, yes, there's a boss you can put on a pox rat, and he's technically monster's cav or whatever, but, or just cavalry, I guess, and then the guy on the bone breakers, I think monster's cav. But that isn't real. That isn't units. We don't have cavalry. We don't have monstrous cavalry. You know, there's so many missing things. And I want some sweet rats riding other things, big monster things. So I would take big pox rats or something like that. Just, you know, make one thing ride another thing in Skaven. That sounds fun. Do that. Do that, Games Workshop. Make it happen.
There you go. Magic wand is waved.
I would say for myself, High Elves. I think the first one I would do is wave the magic wand and get them all painted the way that I want, all 10,000 points.
There you go. That's a good choice.
But no, realistically, like, that's not what he's asking. To answer his question, I would say that I really like Lothar and Seaguard. Like, I love the models. Like, I really dig them and what they're doing. They need longbows. That's the problem here. So either they need longbows or they need to be cheaper. So one or the other. You know, like, cut a point off or give them longbows, and I would be completely content with Seaguard.
Yeah, because those models are so much greater than the regular archers or the regular spearmen that are out there. I have 50 of them, Tom.
Yep.
And I always use them, and I suck it up and pay the points for them because
I do too. Like, I have a block of 50 Seaguard, and, like, they are such a delight to paint. Like, and they take so much time because there's so much detail on them. Mm-hmm. And there's just enough variation amongst all of the accoutrements and the various, like, dongles and medals and stuff like that on them. Like, it is a fantastic unit. I just wish there's just a little tweaks here and there.
Yep, I'm with you.
All right, and our final question of the night is for Kieran, our special guest, and this comes from Lord Tremendous. And he asks, Kieran, if you could play Warhammer against any one person, real or imaginary, historical, alive or dead, who would you like to play Warhammer against?
Well, I read this earlier when I saw it on there, and immediately what popped to mind was to get revenge on Phil Kelly. He's one of the game designers, and we last played when he and I last played. He beat my ass, but that was at 40K, so I wanted to beat him at Warhammer. But actually, I thought a little bit deeper about it because he put in there historical, alive or dead, and this is what occurred to me. What if I could play Warhammer versus Professor Tolkien?
Whoa, nice choice.
Hey, the guy who has given us the foundation of ideas for everything that we're enjoying here. You know, the high fantasy, the elves, the dwarves, and all of that rich world and background behind it. I credit it all to that man. So I want to play the Siege of Gondolin versus Professor Tolkien. That's what I want to do.
That is a beautiful answer. Beautiful answer. I think, not that the question was asked me, but I think I would play Napoleon just to try to inspire some sort of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure scene where I can be like, I don't think it's going to work, man. And he'll be like, no? Napoleon victorious. All right, so, or triumphant, sorry. All right, so there we go. All right, good stuff. I like that answer very much. That is a genius answer. So Kieran, definitely, that's solid. Just a couple comments we got on the show. Lasse Skjervik. I'm sorry if I'm butchering that pronunciation. He says, greetings from Denmark. He loves the show. Well, thanks for watching. We're happy to have you. And then Fof Sif K. His name is a bad word with other F's in it and letters. It's yeah, F off. Clever. He said a friend of his has been playing Lizardmen for a decade, but he doesn't really follow these rumors. How do I break it to him that his Lizzies might be going away? My answer, don't. That's the simple answer. Do not tell him that yet, because we don't know what's happening with it.
As well.
Yeah. Don't scare the man for no reason, because his army, most of the rumors have said the army would still be playable in the next edition, even if it doesn't get supported. It's not like it's going away. Look, Bretonians haven't gotten anything, not a model, not a book, since 6th edition, since 2004. I've once been still taking them to the U.S. Masters prep games, so, you know, like, just because you don't get releases in an edition doesn't mean you can't still play in the edition and be competitive. So
I'm calling bullshit. So here's what you need to do, okay? You need the next game you play against is Lizardmen. If you lose, you need to just make the offhand remark of, well, at least I don't have to worry about him in the next edition. That's how you break it to him.
And if you win, you can be like, well, they're all dead, just like they will be very soon.
Or alternately, when you're playing with them next, you want to ask them if you've seen the new special release of the Flying Pyramid.
Nice. And
it's
then,
a transport.
yeah, that's good. That is all bad advice. Don't do any of that. Just wait until we know.
Actually, your advice right off the cuff, Vince, was the best, and that is just say nothing. Like, I mean, don't get a guy all rope-a-doped in with rumors and conjecture and things that may not be.
There you go.
Certainly don't encourage him to watch the show.
Barrett Musselman says he's watching an eBay auction on one tab, browsing eBay in another, while also watching our show. So clearly he is an enthusiast after our own heart. And then Dark CT just stopped in and said hi. Hello, Dark CT. Good to see you. Buy your stuff.
With you on the Tomb King auction that you're on.
Yeah, nobody be stealing that from me, y'all. Keep your hands off. All right. So that pretty much brings us to the end of our show, all of our questions. I think I touched everybody's questions and comments. Oh, and Nick from Long Island Wargaming. Nick, the original founder of the Feast of Warhammer Weekly, had also sent me a note and said that he was watching. Nick, glad to see you. Always good to hear around, and I'm loving seeing your Tomb Kings reports, man. Keep that stuff up. That was a lot of fun watching that whole series. I've watched with rapt attention as you keep trying and evolving. I really like the slow tweaking of it in the individual games. It's fun to watch those play out. So I don't know what kind of feedback you're getting, but I certainly love it. So well done, sir. But I think that pretty much brings us to a close for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Again, apologize for the late hour. Next week we will be returning to our normal time, same bat channel of 8 p.m. Eastern. Would anybody like to? Do either of you have anything you'd like to sign off with? Any final closing thoughts?
Well, again, I would like to thank all those who have stayed up past their usual bedtimes, perhaps, to watch us. Especially the guy in Denmark, who it must be like 4:30 in the morning right now. Well done.
Absolutely, we like you watching.
Tom, any thoughts?
I got nothing.
Fair enough. It's late. All right. Well, yes, it is late, everyone. Thank you all. Kieran, thank you very much for coming. We would love to have you back. And I'm hoping we can pick up our End Times review series again pretty soon here once if we can get back into the swing of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we will talk about that.
Very good. I look forward to it.
Finish Nagash.
That's right. We got one more. One more. We're so close.
Yeah.
To the book. We'll do Glotkin in like 2 weeks. It'll just be done instantly because it's short. All right. So at any rate, thank you all very much for watching. And as always, see you next Wednesday.